Now, we conceive of change in this circle. It's a circle that has three dimensions, or three legs to it, if you like. Central to those is the activism of alternative social movements. But I believe that it starts with reimagining where we want to go, with new ideas, with rich new ideas that social movements can then take up and organize around in order to strategize as to what do you do in the many spaces, political spaces, public spaces, institutional spaces, like social partnership, in order to achieve your ideals. So I'm going to start with ideas, and I'm going to start at the heart of those are values. And it seems to me this is a terrain that we, progressives, have ceded in Ireland. Ceded to who? To the pro-lifers, to the conservative factions, who have cloaked themselves with the cloak of values. Because we've been afraid that if we talk about values, then we're labelled as being like those. And I suppose it's the Barack Obamas of this world that make us realize that values are central. They're the starting point of all politics, including progressive politics. And what are our values? They're values of equality. They're values of solidarity. They're values of the public realm and investing in the public realm. And that's our starting point, to hold with those values, to promote those values, and to build strategies based on those values. And they're values opposed to the individualism, the consumerism, the lack of generosity, the race to the bottom of cutting taxes, that are the values that inform politics and public action in this society. So ideas start with values, and then they lead on to developing from that a series of alternatives that emerge out of the struggles to engage with the elites of society in order to win the battle for ideas. And so we come on to a number of battles for ideas that it seems to me have been lost. Indeed, you could say they have never adequately been engaged in. And that's the story of the last 20 years. The battle of ideas over what sort of model of development do we espouse? What sort of relationship between public authority invested in the state at all levels and between private authority invested in the free market, particularly in large corporations? What is the relationship between both of those? That constitutes a model of development, and that's what we go into in the bulk of this paper. Equality and redistribution. The understanding of equality, which is central to the work of all you do, has been changed from one that has to do with redistributing wealth and income away from the elites towards ordinary citizens, and particularly the poor. That is the understanding of equality that traditionally has informed social policy, to an understanding of equality that is about protecting difference. I have nothing against that sort of equality. A whole equality authority was set up in this state. Now, of course, it has been neutered because of the actions of the last government. But it was entirely devoted to that latter understanding of equality. But how can you try to give equality of treatment to travellers, to people with disabilities, to lone parents on low incomes, if you forget altogether about any redistributive understanding of equality? There is a complete contradiction, and yet that was a battle that was lost in terms of the understanding of equality. The role of social partnership. Civil society, in the community and voluntary pillar, it seems to me, were far too avid to get a seat around the table without understanding what part of their strategy would this occupy. What would they want to get from that, and what would they have to do apart from having their seat around the table in order to achieve their aims. As an observer of this, I can only say over the years I have been shocked at how little the community and voluntary pillar have achieved from investment of huge amount of time and resources in social partnership. You may have a different view, but at least these issues should have been debated much more robustly in the public sphere. And then, ultimately, the role of the state. What sort of state do we want is absolutely crucial, and how do we fund that state to do the sorts of things that we want it to do? There's a complete contradiction in the public life of this society at the moment, where we have people taking to the streets, as we saw on Saturday in this city, asking for better resourced public services. Yet the same people, when they're asked by people doing opinion polls for the Irish Times, are they willing to pay higher taxes to fund them, they say no. what reality are we living in? And any decent state needs high levels of taxation to fund it. Full stop. And we better get that penny to drop pretty quickly in this society or we've no future. Now, all those battles for ideas weren't lost. It seems to me they were never engaged in. Consensus, so-called consensus, which was the consensus of the economic and political elites of our society, passed for debate and passed for ideas around all of these issues. And until we begin to engage in these sorts of debates, then it seems to me we don't have any basis on which to develop alternative politics and alternative social movements. What ideas are out there to be battled around? And the basic idea of model of development is still there, and that's what we try to inform a debate about in this paper. What is the balance between the role of the state, however conceived, the role of public authorities, and the role of the market? That's a crucial core to the debate that we need to take place in Irish society. And that has to do with issues like public service reform. It is shocking that we had this government 2 weeks ago introducing what they called public service reform without a whimper from anybody to draw attention to the fact that an agenda of cutting back on a public service that's already inadequate is the very last thing we should be doing in a society which has a market system in such crisis as it has. At least have a debate about this, and that's absolutely urgent. What sort of public sector do we want, and how are we going to resource it? Environmental sustainability is, of course, very fast coming to the centre of our debates. How we're going to reduce carbon emissions at the drastic levels we must do so is going to change our lives in the most fundamental ways, our society, our market processes, and we have hardly begun to appreciate what that's going to lead us to. And we need the voices of people whose concerns are with a more egalitarian and just society to be part of that. Taxation is clearly the most crucial dimension of public policy that helps us to achieve these aims. And yet again, that whole agenda about taxation has been dominated by what? By a simple agenda of cutting taxes, dominated by a neoliberal PD view of what taxation should be about. Again, shocking that we haven't had more robust debate about these sorts of issues. And then all of this is necessary if we try to achieve the objective of a more egalitarian society. If we don't engage in this range of debates, then all our talk about equality is simply hot air. The role of the EU is crucial to this. What sort of European Union do we want? In this globalized world, are we going to retreat into some Sinn Féin idea that we can go it alone? Well, if we do, it seems to me we're fast on a path to nowhere. But are we happy with the form of the EU as we have it at the moment? And here we have a golden opportunity with the Lisbon referendum campaign, and there was an absolute silence from organised sectors of civil society who might have some rich ideas to offer about that. And then finally, the need, of course, which has now become absolutely crucial for stronger global regulation, not just of the financial sector, but indeed of the whole free market sector, private market sector. And again, people who espouse a more egalitarian and just society have a necessary voice to offer to this. So I now hand over to Mary. All we'll end off with here is a quick quote to draw your attention to the fact that political struggle does depend in part on the ability to imagine alternative worlds. The act of reimagining is central to any new beginning.